Welcome to episode 65 of Working Towards Our Purpose. In today's episode, we are going to talk about the art of letting go. But before we get into that, we are going to do our check-in with ourselves. So take a moment to check in with yourself, see how you're feeling today, see where you're at. And as I'm doing that for myself, I am feeling a bit tired. I didn't get too much sleep last night. So acknowledging that, feeling a little bit lower energy. Doing some new stuff and fighting the battle of telling yourself you're not good at it and taking that seriously, because obviously I'm not good at it. It's a new thing. Just maybe a little worn out today. But that's all right, because we're here. I'm here. And we got a episode today. I got something that I want to talk about that I think will be helpful. And hopefully you've got a second to check in with yourself before we start. So let's get into today's episode, The Art of Letting Go. This sort of came about because I am trying to grow my YouTube, trying to make 500 subscribers, the 1,000 watch hours so you can turn on monetization, really trying to learn a lot about YouTube and trying to figure out how to make it work. It just kind of brought up this idea, along with this book that I'm reading over here, about Stoicism. And just the idea that there's only certain things that you can focus on at once and control. That that's what I want to say about that. But to think about I think I want to frame this whole episode first, so maybe just ignore what I just said. But I want to frame the episode about for someone who's starting something new, for somebody who is trying to work on a business or making a change in their life, and then sort of coming up with hitting the obstacles and trying to overcome them. I think one of the biggest obstacles is trying to control everything. So that's what this episode is going to be about. It's going to be about letting go of the things that we can and controlling the other things that we can. And as I was digging into my YouTube and trying to figure out what I can do to grow, I can't make people subscribe. I can't make people watch. Obviously that's out of my control, but what are the things that I can control? So it got me really thinking a lot about worrying, because worrying is one thing that comes up when you're talking about trying to overly control things. And I don't know, it just kind of reminded me, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent, but it reminded me of how worry is a part of my family. I think maybe it's genetic. I don't know, probably passed down just through observing. Definitely worry is part of my family. And my grandmother on my father's side was a huge worrier, and she used to worry about so many different things. And thinking about that kind of helped me a little bit, because it's I worry a lot, so it kind of makes sense because I observed that as a kid. But then I tried to put a little bit of I thought of this one story that put sort of a lighter spin on it. I remember one time she was talking about the animals outside, and I think specifically squirrels, because she had a lot of squirrels outside of her house. And I'm pretty sure I remember the story. Maybe, I guess it's possible I'm making it up. I was young. But I swear I remember her saying something what are the squirrels going to do? Because it's getting cold out. It's the winter time. Where are they going to go? I want them to be warm. I'm worried about them. And obviously I think the squirrels probably got it figured out at this point. And she might've been joking a little bit, but I think there was definitely a part of her that was serious and did worry about those things, because she did worry about a lot of different things, whether it was her grandkids or her children or anything really. There was just a lot of worry. And So thinking about that, thinking about how we worry, how I worry, some of that stuff we can let go. Like I think worrying about the squirrels in the wintertime is something we can probably let go of, unless we're like gonna go build a squirrel sanctuary or something. In that case, by all means. But there's certain things that we can let go of, and there's certain things that we can focus on. And I think, back to the idea of like you're building something, you're trying to make a change, you're trying to improve yourself, focusing on the things that you can do something about and letting go the rest can be extremely helpful, because when you do something new or different, you get overwhelmed easily. There's like so many things going on. And I think maybe it's human nature. I don't know. At least it's my nature to like want to control everything. You want to know how everything's going to happen. You want to like lay out all these plans. You want to make sure that you can make things work. And a lot of times I think we just overly... All right. A lot of times I think that I can overly control things in order to make something happen. YouTube channel, for example. Like I think there was a time where I was like, okay, I need to be monetized by the end of the year. And that's something that I want to make happen. But I can't really control that. I certainly can't control that. So to think about these sort of problems in a different light of like, how can we let go of the things that we can't control and then focus on the things that we can control? So brings me into the next part of this episode. How do we let go? So I got 3 steps here that we can work through to help let go of the things that don't matter. So I think the first thing is realizing that action is the only thing that we actually can control. And that sometimes takes a little bit of thinking about, like, obviously an action would be like making this podcast. I'm making this podcast right now. It's an action that I'm doing. I'm putting it on YouTube. Therefore, it's an action I'm doing to help grow my YouTube channel. That's something that like I can control. Another thing that is an action is like, we get to decide how we act based off of how other people treat us. Which is a reaction, which to me is another action. So, if somebody leaves a comment on my YouTube channel, for example, and it's a mean comment, I could get upset about it. I could comment back. I could say something mean, ban myself, whatever, feed into the negativity, or I could just let it go. And, that's like an action. I'm choosing to not do anything about it. I'm choosing to not do anything. Therefore, to me, a reaction to something is an action. And then another thing that comes to mind with actions is like your thoughts. And a lot of times you don't get to decide what your thoughts are. They just kind of pop into your head. You don't get to really choose your feelings. They kind of just happen, but you can decide like what you do with them. So you can observe your thoughts, notice that they're in a negative pattern, and then choose to try to do something to change them, to either, think more positive thoughts or meditate, journal, whatever, do something to change the way that your thoughts are existing. So to me, that's like the biggest thing, is to realize that the only thing that you really have control over is your own actions. And I think that is a really important realization. Like I was trying to do some research into this episode before I was recording, and I was like looking up articles about like letting go and like reading like Psychology Today and stuff. And it was funny because they would all have like, they're like 10 things the things you can control. And I would read down them, and like every single one of them were just an action. So to me, it's like, well, that simplifies things even so much more. Is because like you look at any situation and you're like, the only thing I can control here is how I act. And I think that for me anyways, it really helps simplify the overwhelm that can easily come about. So then the second step here in the art of letting go is letting go of the rest. And of course that's easier said than done, but to realize that if something is not an action, then we can start to let it go. And that to me is really helpful too, because I think thinking about like what I can do and then knowing that everything else just falls into the category of letting go, it makes that sort of thought process a little bit easier. I don't have to work that hard to figure out what I should be letting go. So now, knowing what you should let go and then also letting it go are two different things. So how do you start to let things go? I think one thing that's helpful is always to allow yourself to feel a certain way. Or allow yourself to feel your feelings about whatever's happening. Because even if you can't control it, you still might have feelings about it. And allowing yourself to feel those feelings can then help you work through it and actually let it go, versus ignoring the feeling, being angry, and then continuing to be angry about it. For example, negative YouTube comments. I've gotten those. If I just pretended like it didn't upset me, or like I wasn't bothered by it in the slightest, I probably would still be thinking about it, and it would probably still make me angry. It might prevent me from putting something out there that could be controversial and think about like what a negative person would comment to it. But I could, or what I did in that case was I thought about it for a second. I like tried to allow myself to be like angry and be like, why is this person, saying this thing, whatever. And allowing myself to feel that emotion that's tied with what happened. And then I can let it go. I'm allowing myself to be upset. I'm allowing myself to be angry. And then I'm letting it go and moving on. And because there's nothing that I can do to prevent that. So letting go is, sort of a tricky thing. I've always had trouble letting go. I've always had trouble letting things go. And that's part of why like I'm doing this episode now, is like I'm trying to let go of the idea that I have control over this YouTube channel that I'm creating and building. And it's a reminder to me that like I have no control over how many subscribers I get, over how many people watch things, but I do have control over my actions. So that leads me to the third step of the art of letting go, which is action. It's like deciding to do the thing. So for example, instead of worrying about how many subscribers I have, I'm going to go make a podcast. I'm going to go make a different type of video for YouTube that I haven't made before. I'm going to go add more things to build this resource that I've created. Those are things that I can do. So deciding to take the action, I think is like the last step here. And then another thing too that can be helpful as far as like trying to work through the act of letting go. And this one may sound silly, but it always helps me. Anytime I'm like by the ocean, or if I look up at the stars at night, it also happens like when I'm in the desert, but I don't live near the desert, so I can't really do that. But if you do, maybe you can do this. It's just like seeing nature in the expansiveness that it is, how big it is, makes me feel small, which then makes me sort of not worry about all these things that I'm trying to control, because I sort of realize like, you know what, I don't really have as much control as I think, or I don't have as much control as I want to be having. So that's been really helpful for me to just kind of take a step back and be like, okay, all this stuff that you're worrying about, there's really only a little bit you can control. And, that is your actions. Another thing that helps with that is like hiking, going out in nature, like surrounding myself with nature, I think also kind of gives me that same sort of feeling. And then another thing I can do to help to sort of calm my overwhelm is to meditate and to be still, which is something that we always come to with these actions. And then the last thing that I wanted to add was to sort of play and like laugh, joke around. I think that when you don't take yourself as seriously, when I don't take myself as seriously, it becomes easier to let things go. And I notice that they kind of go hand in hand. When I'm trying to let something go and there's like a ton of resistance and stuff, I'm usually taking myself too seriously. And if I can go laugh about something, go maybe watch something that's funny, go joke around with a friend, then it usually becomes a little bit easier to see, okay, this is something that like I can't control. I can let it go. I can move through it. So yeah, I think that's something that's kind of always worked for me too. So yeah, working through those 3 steps of letting go, thinking about the action that you can take, letting go of the rest, and then doing the action, like actually doing the action. That's the 3rd step. I know I always confuse these steps, but I'm confident on these this time. The first step is deciding the action, and then the second one's letting everything go, and then the third one is like actually doing it. Like go do the thing, go for a hike, go look at the stars. So I think that's sort of the process that sort of helped me to realize that we don't have control over a lot of the things that we wish that we did. And I think that's kind of all that I want to say about this. I know it's a little bit early, but that's okay. I did want to end this episode though with a quote from this book that I'm reading now. I haven't finished. I kind of just started it. It's called How to Be a Stoic. And I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Massimo Pigliucci, Italian guy, I guess. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. But there's a quote in here that sort of just reinforced kind of this whole episode, kind of, helped to give me the idea of this episode, because I was reading this as I was sort of struggling with my YouTube channel. And the quote is, I don't even know where it's from. Some ancient Stoic, some older guy, I guess. But the quote says, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us." And I know that's super simplistic and straightforward and simple, but I think that there's a lot of truth in that. And I think that the more that I can try to live in that way, the simpler things become, the easier things become. And I think the biggest thing, to tie it back to the beginning, is like when you're starting something new, you have to give yourself a little bit of grace that like things may take longer than you want them to, or things may be a little bit more harder than you want them to. But if you can continue to keep doing it and you can continue to show up each day, you will succeed. You will eventually figure it out. And I think there's no better like analogy than growing a YouTube channel. And, starting a YouTube channel a couple months ago, in 2025 seems like a saturated market. It seems like it's going to be impossible to do that. But, you can think into those things that you can't control, or you could just start making videos. I can just start making videos, and that's what I did. And that's what I'm doing. So those are the things that I can focus on, and eventually I'll figure it out. And if it's not as soon as I want it to be, that's okay. I know that I have high expectations of myself always, and perhaps you do too. So maybe we can go into it knowing that, and sort of allowing ourselves to let the process take as much time as it needs to. So yeah, hopefully this episode was helpful for you. Leave a comment on YouTube of maybe something that you do to try to let go, something that's helpful for you, so you can help other people out who are watching this. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it, and I will see you on another episode real soon. Take care.